Good evening. On behalf of the Boulder JCC, we welcome you to the Menopausal Nutrition program. Women of the J is a program of the Boulder JCC that provides a forum for community building through social, educational, and social justice programs. Our aim is to host events that inspire meaningful conversations, and we are honored to bring high-caliber programming to the Boulder community. There are so many amazing upcoming programs at the JCC, and I encourage you to check those out at boulderjcc.org. As Lauren mentioned, philanthropy is essential to our organization. Your generosity makes this all possible, so thank you. Women of the J programs are underwritten in honor of Mark H. Monheimer by the Mervyn L. Brenner Foundation. We are grateful for their support. A heartfelt thank you to Hadassah Boulder, our promotional partner. They're in the back. And we'd also like to thank Colorado Gynecological Cancer Alliance for sharing vital information about the BRCA gene with us tonight. For more information, please visit them in the back corner over there. This program is being recorded, and we will share that next week. I'm thrilled to welcome tonight's speakers who bring immense knowledge and compassion to the field of menopausal nutrition. They will share their insights through individual presentations, followed by a Q&A session at the end of the evening. Okay. Our first presenter is Dr. Malia Swanson. Malia is a board-certified family medicine physician and a Menopause Society certified practitioner. Dr. Swanson is the founder of Boulder Menopause and Boulder Valley Direct Primary Care, where she provides personalized, integrative care focused on performance and longevity. A specialist in menopause and metabolic health, she rejects the idea of normal for your age, instead empowering women to achieve strength and clarity. She also brings specialized expertise in supporting breast cancer survivors through hormone therapy. Please welcome Dr. Swanson.
Hi, I'm Dr. Malia Swanson. I'm so grateful to be with you tonight. I run an integrative clinic in Lafayette where I help women with nutrition, exercise, hormone health, all the pillars that really make the menopause transition better and better supported. So tonight, I'm going to introduce some key concepts around how hormonal shift in menopause can be better supported with nutrition. What I find, I was even thinking on the way over here today after seeing patients today, I was like, you know, my patients are getting the exercise piece down more and more because you can walk into a training session and just be well supported. But in looking through food logs with my patients, I feel like women are very under-supported there. There's still a question of what should I be doing and how do I go about that? And I hope that we can answer those questions for you tonight. So I'm going to start with a fictional character, Heather, but she's really most of my patients. So Heather's a 46-year-old female. She has a couple of kids. She's feeling really burned out, really tired. She notices that in her 20s and 30s, she would maybe skip breakfast, not pay attention really to what she ate. She would work out occasionally how she wanted to. She didn't notice any weight gain at that time and had adequate energy. Now she's noticing she's eating a little bit better, she's getting more sleep, she's exercising more, and yet in spite of that, she's doing the same things and she's noticing this weight gain around the middle. And it's really grief-filled for her. She's wondering, like, do I buy new pants? How is this affecting my long-term health? It's not just a vanity piece for her. So she comes to me and she says, my goals are to lose fat, gain muscle, have more clarity and energy, and to prevent long-term disease. So what do we do first with Heather? So let's first talk about what Heather's going through. So I think my husband actually noticed that I didn't have this in the talk, and he's like, you got to get that in there. It's such a key piece to understanding what our hormones are doing in this transition. So you can see the normal reproductive years. Here, let me come around. Let's see. Okay. You can see the normal reproductive years. This is estrogen in red, and then the blue is progesterone. So there's a lot of cycling we do in our reproductive years, but at least it's more steady cycling. And then, as we go through menopause, the brain in general is starting to see less estrogen from our ovaries. And so it starts to yell, it starts to knock on the door and say, hey, I'm not seeing enough estrogen, it's causing some issues up here in the brain and in our heart and our body. So the brain starts yelling down with follicle-stimulating hormone and gets the ovaries to produce more hormones. And so you get these higher highs than you've ever had in your life. And these flaring hormones cause the list of 40 symptoms that we could list. Brain fog, weight gain, low libido, temperature instability, you shout them out, brittle nails, hot flashes, all the things people come for all the time that I can't talk about right now, insomnia, irritability, rage, all the pieces. So, so they cause all the symptoms, but more than that, as hormones start to go down, you start to see huge metabolic shifts. So my patients come in with their symptoms, and I value their symptoms, and I value their quality of life, and I secretly in the back of my head care also equally about their long-term health and their longevity and keeping them out of a nursing home. Most of us in this room will die of a heart attack or stroke, and dementia is on the rise because of metabolic causes. So I really care about their hormonal hormones and how they're affecting their metabolic and long-term health. So let's talk about, we do an extensive lab panel in Heather, and what do we see? So I took out the numbers here because I just wanted to make this simple and show trends. What we see in most menopausal women is that as estrogen goes down, we get this visceral fat gain around the belly, and that causes insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? It's a term that is thrown out all the time, and I'm always trying to find the best way to explain it to my patients. Insulin resistance is when the hormone insulin in our body helps us move blood sugar from the bloodstream, where it's toxic and inflammatory in high amounts, into the muscles and organs so it can be used. It's a key hormone. You die without insulin. You need insulin. But in menopause, as estrogen goes down, and sometimes with a genetic history of maybe diabetes or prediabetes in the family contributing, you start to see that our body's not listening to insulin as much. So insulin rises, and we start to see issues with that. So not only does blood sugar rise, but also when insulin rises, insulin is a growth hormone. It tells our body, put on fat, grow like a child, hold on, crave sugar. It's this growth hormone that is not fun to have at a high level in your body. This is a really key part of the metabolic picture that some of our coaches tonight will talk about. How do we mitigate insulin resistance? But it's a key piece of the puzzle. So her insulin rises. When I start to see an insulin level of above 5, I start to call insulin resistance. When I start to see someone's A1C rising, a lot of times a doctor won't even mention to you that your A1C was 5.5. Maybe your A1C, the measure of your blood sugar for the last 3 months, used to be 5, and now it's 5.3. That's a huge jump for you. So once you look at your own trends, you might see maybe your A1C is rising. Maybe your blood cholesterol level is rising because your estrogen is going down. ApoB is a huge cardiovascular risk marker that's really important that you check. And a lot of women are unaware of it, and it's really important to watch the trend there as well. So we see these trends. We also see a loss of iron, vitamin D, magnesium. Why do we see that? Estrogen impacts the microbiome. Our coaches will talk about that tonight. We do not absorb minerals and nutrients as well in menopause because of the drop in estrogen. And they are so key, and with heavy bleeding that comes with those spikes in estrogen, we lose more iron. So we'll talk about how to get these essential minerals and all of the important things we can do with nutrition to affect these trends. Okay, these are numbers I just put in the slide deck so that if you look at the slide deck later, you can compare it to your own labs for reference. So what does Heather's body composition look like? So we do a Sika body scan, and we see that her visceral fat is rising. She used to be lower on that belly fat, and it's rising, and that's inflammatory fat that's inflaming her organs and increasing her risk of heart disease, stroke, and dementia. I also see that her muscle is in the yellow. That's the main thing I care about here. This is a big issue for her. Muscle is a key organ that reduces inflammation in the body, improves mood, improves the immune system, strengthens your bones. It is such a key organ. And when we don't have enough on our body, it makes menopause harder, and it does not keep us out of a nursing home. I also look at her bone density. She pays $50 for a cash paid DEXA because her insurance won't cover it, and she wants to know what her bone density is. She sees that she already, at the age of 46, has osteopenia. I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of blurry, but she already has osteopenia, which is low bone density. So we're gonna be talking with Heather about how do we get enough calcium. So I do a really intensive food log with Heather, and I see that there are some key areas where Heather is really, there are gaps in Heather's nutrition, and there are ways she could be supporting herself that she's not. And what I see all the time, I would say almost every single food log I've ever seen in a menopausal woman is not eating enough. And that's the issue when we grow up in this 80s skinny culture of low fat this and calories in and calories out. There's a deficit, and you cannot build and put on muscle and bone when you're not eating enough. So when I talk about protein, we were just talking about this at our table. How much protein is enough? Why is protein important? Protein at a certain threshold triggers muscle building. It is not always dose dependent. If you don't get a solid 30-gram protein load within an hour of working out, it is not dose dependent. Your 15-gram load will not trigger muscle synthesis. If you work out and you don't eat 30 grams of protein within that hour, it is a workout somewhat in vain. Because without estrogen and testosterone in solid places in menopause, if your body doesn't get enough nutrition and it undergoes the stress of a workout, it starts to feel very unsafe. Cortisol rises, it starts to break down muscle and bone in response to that workout. So women are getting to the gym. I feel like that's almost the easier part at this point. But they're not planning ahead and saying, how can I fuel myself to actually build the muscle I need to after the gym? Another key area I see in need, a big issue that I see that Heather could improve in is fiber. So fiber lowers your blood sugar and lowers your cholesterol. Eating enough fiber will lower your LDL cholesterol. It's that simple. So fiber is not intuitive. We're going to talk tonight about how to get fiber. Fiber is preventative of colon cancer. It reduces your risk of colon cancer. It helps with the gut microbiome and helps you feel full longer. It is so key. It might sound trivial, but it's so key. Helps you have healthy bowel movements as well. Iron is really key. Most of my women are struggling to get enough iron in, and we're probably supplementing if you're in perimenopause, because you really want your ferritin to be above 50 if you're an active human being, to avoid brain fog, have enough energy, and really to feel well in your body and have a good immune system. Calcium. Calcium to strengthen the bones primarily needs to come through food. Most women get between 300 and 900 milligrams a day. Most women need 1,200 to 1,500 milligrams in their food every day. You cannot build bones if you don't have the hormones, the strength training, and the nutrition on board. You have to have those components. Lastly, I think one of the biggest and easiest things that's easy to fix in food is when you eat. We are most sensitive to insulin and most ready to take in food to support our bodies earlier in the day. Culturally, we eat more later. You are most sensitive to insulin before 2 p.m. If you can eat the majority of your calories before 2 p.m., if you can get a 30-gram protein load within an hour of waking up, within an hour of working out, if you can get these loads in earlier in the day, you tell your body, I am safe, you can build muscle and bone, you don't have to break down. So women who are used to waking up, fasting, having a coffee, that stimulates cortisol, stimulates weight gain, and is not beneficial in the menopause transition. Okay, so I'm gonna pass the mic on to these wonderful coaches who are gonna guide us in, these are the gaps, how do we actually support ourselves?
Next, we are honored to welcome Kim McCormick. Kim is a board-certified nutrition and health coach specializing in gut health and the microbiome, with a focus on women's health and autoimmune conditions. Trained in functional nutrition and the autoimmune paleo approach, she brings a whole-body perspective to supporting digestive health and overall wellness. Kim also has decades of experience as a massage therapist, working with athletes. She's dedicated to helping individuals find sustainable paths to optimal health. Please welcome Kim McCormick.
Okay, thanks, Aurel. I don't know how I follow that. Malia kicked butt. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I kind of like to think of, I'm going to bring this over here. I kind of like to think of you building your toolbox, which you kind of just got a hint on that with Malia, but it's, these are sort of the categories I feel are your toolbox. You can see up here, like sleep and nutrition are kind of my two that I'm going to focus on today. Oh, there we go. I just realized. No, I think this is good. I can do this. I liked how casual Malia looked. And then you can also see stress management, exercise, and community are also, I think, a key piece to your big picture health. But today I'm just going to focus on a little bit on sleep and then go to nutrition. So sleep hygiene, like to me, if your sleep is not in order, your nutrition isn't really going to get you fully there. It's going to help, it's going to move the needle, but your sleep really needs to be a focus. And it is hard for a lot of us because when we're in menopause and perimenopause, we tend to find our sleep falling apart. But try to just aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep, which means you probably need to be in bed more than that because you're waking up in the night, right? Keep a consistent sleep schedule, so you're 7 days a week, you're getting up and going to bed within like an hour window on either end of the day. Find your rhythm. You don't have to be an early bird, you don't have to be a night owl, just find what works for you. Create a cool, dark environment. No screens 1 to 2 hours before bed, and if you can't avoid that, wear blue blockers. Light caffeine, and eat early, kind of as Malia was saying, like front load your day with your main nutrition and then eat lighter at the end of the day and have a light stomach going to bed. If you're digesting when you go to bed, it's going to disrupt, especially like your deep sleep, and your sleep structure is going to fail. And to set all this up, get outside for early morning sun within 30 minutes of waking. And you don't look at the sun, but no sunglasses, kind of just take in the light. And that cues your pituitary to kind of set your circadian rhythm. So those are kind of and then you can see why it's important, like, 'cause, your cortisol will rise if you're having poor sleep, and that creates cravings and insulin swings, and you'll see more of that with Rachel's talk. She's gonna go into all the things that affect your insulin and glucose spikes. Okay, so just some nutrition basics. Eat protein with every meal, and minimum of 20 to 30 grams, but really you should be aiming for higher. And track. You should look up some good trackers, and I think, Malia, didn't there's a slide at the end that does name some good trackers, MyFitnessPal, Chronometer. I can't remember, something like that. Anyway, track your food for a little while and understand, because you might think that you're getting a whole lot of protein, and you're like, yeah, I ate 2 eggs, and 2 eggs is actually about 12 grams of protein. So watch that. Include healthy fats daily, consume fiber-rich foods, and you're aiming for 30 to 40 grams daily of varied sources. And if you find that you're not getting that, don't just slam yourself there. Go titrate slowly, because otherwise you'll find yourself having problems. Limit your caffeine to morning hours and limit alcohol consumption. I'm sure you guys have all been in on the recent conversations that are saying no amount of alcohol is actually good for you, even when they say, oh, red wine with the resveratrol. That's been debunked. Get your resveratrol someplace else. So this, you guys will be able to access this slide and any of these slides later on and print these out. I'm not going to go through this with you, but this is an equation you can use for your basal metabolic rate and get what you estimate for you within about 200, forward, 200 calories on either side of what you burn in a day. So take that number, and then you will go to, I gotta look at my notes. By that, you'll look at how much protein you're getting if you're estimating for 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight. I was actually just talking to Malia, and she feels it should be higher at this point in our lives as perimenopausal and menopausal women. And I won't disagree, actually, but so to break down that number you get out of this equation, you'll go to your 0.8 to 1 grams per pound of body weight and get that number, and then the rest of it comes out to about 30 to 40% between your carbs and your fats. And your carbs should be coming from whole, unprocessed carbs, not bags and boxes and barcodes, as much as you can. I won't say a cookie here and there is bad, but limit. And your fat, you should embrace it, but look at your saturated fat and try and keep that below 20 grams per day for your saturated. But you can see how many effects that protein has. Malia touched on it a little bit, but it is for our muscle tissues and our exercise recovery, your hair, your skin. It helps produce our hormones. It helps with our bone density. About 50% of our bone index is protein, and our mass is a third of it is protein. So protein really helps us stay out of that bone loss and muscle loss. We become anabolic resistant is the term, where we don't as efficiently bring in our protein as we get older, and especially as menopausal women. So we really need to up this ante here for protein to make sure that we stay vibrant and healthy as we age, as you don't want to end up all bent and broken and having brain issues. So these are all the various support systems that protein can affect. How are we doing on time? This you can print out. It just has some ideas of what, 30 grams of protein in 4.7 ounces, which you don't have to weigh your food, but a lot of times you see it when you buy it, like, okay, this is a 6-ounce piece of tuna. And so okay, well, that's going to be 44 grams of protein. Anyway, you can print this out. It's a nice thing to have just for you to get an idea of what that looks like. So I'm going to move on to fiber, because fiber is really key to keeping your microbial diversity. We lose estrogen, and that protects our gut microbes and our gut lining. And as we lose that, then our microbial diversity kind of goes out the window unless we really combat it with diverse sources of fiber. And you want to aim for 30 to 40 grams of fiber per day from a varied source. And I like to say you get 30 different sources of fiber per week. So that's nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruit, all the different plant foods. It can be beans, legumes, grains, all that can be counted as one source of fiber. And the next slide I'll be showing you, it has a breakdown of that too, the carbs with how much fiber per serving of various forms of fiber or carbohydrates. But you can see that this cascade of issues can happen. It's like, I like to put it as, it's like a general admission concert, your gut. And if you have it all full of good, happy microbes, then there's no seats for the bad, opportunistic, and pathogenic microbes. But as we go down the menopausal cascade, then you do lose some of those seats up to pathogenic and commensal or opportunistic bacteria. And so then you get a mosh pit, right? How many of you guys have felt that mosh pit? I have, I know that. And you see all these different symptoms pop up when you feel that. And I mean, you all have heard the term leaky gut. That's what that is. It's your microbial diversity is breaking down, and it's causing little gaps in the little lining that you have that lets nutrients into your body. So we can fight that with the fiber, and you will increase the microbial diversity as well as your short-chain fatty acids, which I have a little square over there about it, and how your short-chain fatty acids will decrease as you go through menopause. So getting enough fiber is also important for that. You can see, oops, I keep doing that. I'm trying to find the laser. So you can see here, it helps with your food digestion and eliminating toxins. All these different, and your endocrine and neurological functions are here with your short-chain fatty acids. Keeping them up really is important. And you can get that with, again, all these different sources of fiber, which you can see here. So I stole this slide from, I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Carrie Jones, but she's like the queen of hormones out on the internet right now. But all these things that should be good start to decline here with your different bacteria that you want in your belly start to decline. Your estrogen metabolism goes a little bit haywire. It should be wrapped up in a little box and you poop it out, but a lot of times it's kind of like let fly back into your body, and that can cause a host of issues. You have less energy to spend, your BMI starts to rise, your body fat. You don't take up glucose as well, and your insulin sensitivity goes out the door with lower microbial diversity, all these things. And you start to increase on all these other issues. Bad, these are like what I talk about, the opportunistic and pathogenic microbes. And you start getting weight gain, you don't process your glucose as well. And you also you gain weight and your blood pressure rises, and you tend to start having bad lipid profiles. So getting your fiber, these are different sources of both soluble and insoluble, and you want to get a mix of both through your diet every day. And so your diet can be really delicious, and Joe is going to talk about that later, how to really create a good plate. But these are some nice sources. And here's another thing you can print out that kind of gives you an idea of how much of a serving gives you how many carbs versus fiber. So it's nice if you have more fiber, like higher fiber values. So I have little stars next to these guys that have higher fiber compared to their carbohydrate content. And again, you'll get a little bit more about how to figure your structure of your plate and stuff between Rachel and Joe. And I just want to finish up with, because a lot of people don't read their labels, they just see like, oh, it says on the front of the box, like low carb or healthy fiber. Really what you want to do, and this is me, and some people might disagree, but I feel like you start here, you start here with number one, and you look at what the list of ingredients are. And if you see a bunch of stuff that you're like, what is that? I don't know what that means, or what does that say? And even things like natural flavors, not necessarily is that good. Then you go up here to the serving size, and that way you know how much of what you're getting ready to eat, what these numbers pertain to, how much of that. Then you come down, sorry, it's hard to see. You come down here to your carbohydrates, dietary fiber, and sugars, and added sugars. If you see more than like 5 grams of added sugar, put it back. Most doctors recommend less than 30 grams of added sugar every day. Then you come up here to your saturated fat, how much saturated fat, how much protein, and then last but not least, you look at your calorie total. So hopefully that gives you guys some good ideas on how to structure your food and what to look for in fiber, mostly in protein. And then I'm handing it off to the next.
Thank you so much, Kim. Okay, my name is Elise, and it is my pleasure to introduce Rachel Cruz, a national board-certified health and wellness coach, certified functional nutrition counselor, and lifestyle coach for diabetes prevention. Rachel is a health coach who helps clients master the connection between blood glucose and vibrant health. Through one-on-one sessions and her signature Glucose Wise program, she uses real-time data from continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, to make health insights actionable. Known for her calm and supportive approach, Rachel simplifies complex science to empower clients with the confidence and clarity needed for long-term vitality. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Rachel Cruz.
I'm so glad Elise said calm. Let's see. So I'm Rachel Cruz, and this is using a continuous glucose monitor to master perimenopause and beyond. I'm going to start with the basic explanation of glucose and insulin. Malia went through insulin so well, so I might skip my next slide. But when we eat carbohydrates like bread, pasta, rice, fruit, or veggies, the way that Kim had mentioned, our body breaks them down into glucose, and this process begins when you eat any carbohydrate. Food starts to break down in the mouth and then continues down into the stomach, further breaking the carbohydrates down into glucose and other nutrients. The glucose is then absorbed into the bloodstream and becomes usable energy. Glucose is the fuel our body prefers, just like a car needs gasoline. Our cells run on glucose to power everything from movement to thinking to digestion. Estrogen levels before menopause, as has already been mentioned, helps to maintain insulin sensitivity by helping to make sure glucose gets into cells and tissues, keeping blood glucose balanced. And I'll talk more about insulin in the next slide, maybe, depending on what I remember what Malia talked about. She was so thorough. The blood glucose becomes unstable and difficult to manage when estrogen levels decline. Blood glucose in postmenopause, those glucose levels are even higher after we eat, and this can cause increased fat storage, as already spoken about, specifically in the abdominal area, and this is where there's a lot of opportunity to shift the trajectory in your nutrition choices. Symptoms like hot flashes and sleep disruptions and all the other lovely things that we keep experiencing through the transition actually becomes more unstable, and we experience more of that with glucose levels when they're higher. So when glucose is balanced, it's so important for women in perimenopause and beyond, because when blood sugar is unstable, it drives weight gain, which we already talked about, and cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, as well as symptoms of brain fog and greater risk of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's. I don't know if I need to go through this, but we'll see. So insulin is a hormone made up in the pancreas, and it is like a key into the cells, as that illustration shows, and it helps to decide where glucose is needed, and it could be for the muscles as you move, or the cells that power your brain, or even the cells in your small intestine to help you digest your food. Wherever cells need energy when your body's metabolically healthy, insulin is efficiently and effectively helping to shuffle that glucose around. And when you talk about the ability to use insulin efficiently, you're either insulin resistant or you're insulin sensitive. And this can be confusing, but we want to be insulin sensitive, where insulin is working correctly to shuffle glucose into the right places, whether it's for immediate use or it ends up being stored. So interestingly, at any given time, we really only need less than a teaspoon of glucose circulating in our blood. That's where the normal range of 70 to 140 milligrams per deciliter comes in on the CGM, and I'll show you more on that in a minute. So again, during the hormonal shift, because we experience the decline in estrogen, this makes us more susceptible to insulin resistance. Estrogen normally keeps cells insulin sensitive, and the weakened cell signaling leads to higher blood glucose levels, causing inflammation and visceral fat to accumulate. It can even impair the pancreas's ability to secrete insulin, exacerbating the situation even more. Declining estrogen and progesterone make testosterone more available in the body during the menopause transition, and this often triggers a shift in fat storage from the hips and thighs to the abdomen, increasing visceral fat. So your body is following a predictable, normal hormonal cascade. It actually affects every woman during menopause. We really, sincerely are not alone in this. You just turn to the next person and they'll, yes, we are experiencing this. It happens. So some good news from a recent Menopause Society article, a new meta-analysis of 17 unique randomized controlled trials that covered more than 29,000 participants between 1998 and 2024 found that hormone therapy significantly reduced insulin resistance in healthy postmenopausal women who did not have metabolic disease, like diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. So, in other words, menopause hormone therapy was a beneficial therapy to balance blood glucose even post-menopause. So here's where CGMs could help us figure out what's happening in our body. There are non-prescriptive over-the-counter CGMs that are available for anyone to buy, and you don't need a prescription. The CGM pictured here shows an injector and the sensor. The injector is preloaded with the sensor, and to install it, you position the injector usually on the back of your upper arm or tricep area. You push down on the whole injector until it won't go anymore, and you press the big white button. And then in less than a second, a needle inserts a thin filament the size of a hair into your skin, and the sensor reads the interstitial fluid that's between your cells. It's the filament that stays in the skin, not a needle. So you don't have to worry about having this pokey thing sticking into your arm for 2 weeks. It's not like that. The sensor has an adhesive, so it's stuck to your skin and it will stay on until you take it off. And in most cases, the sensor lasts upwards of 14 to 15 days, and after that, you just pull it off and you throw it away. Unfortunately, you can't reuse the sensor. You can do all your daily activities. You can swim, you can shower, you can sweat, and if you're worried about the sensor coming off, there are over patches that you can buy that can help keep it on and keep it from catching on anything. So this CGM actually pairs with an app on your smartphone. It takes readings every 5 to 10 minutes or so, 24/7 real-time readings through the 14 days. This brand of CGM will tell you when the sensor is about to expire, and it will give you a 12-hour grace period, so you can apply another CGM onto your skin before the old one expires, and that way you don't have a gap in the data. And if your smartphone is paired with another device like your watch, and you have your watch set to automatically measure your activity like steps or exercise, you can sync the app to log those activities too. So it is syncing with your CGM. And that includes an Aura ring as well. And with this particular brand of CGM, there are functions within the app that let you log your meals. You can even take pictures of your meals instead of like having to type it in, which is so annoying. So you just take a picture of it, and it actually has AI read the plate, and it will determine what is on your plate and even break down the macronutrients for you. That's how smart technology has gotten, with a caveat that when you look at the data, you need to make sure that it's accurate. And this particular CGM allows you to edit the entry so that if AI is wrong, say, yes, you're wrong, and you can fix that. So you can connect your CGM data with practitioners, and then they can see how your readings are going. It was super helpful when you're being coached through your therapeutic nutrition. There's no guessing that's needed. In this, you know just by looking at the CGM what your body is doing. Super helpful for when you're going through perimenopause or even beyond. You learn so much in that 2 weeks that you don't have to guess. The data provides a lot of insights, and because of that, you have a chance to respond in real time. So the phone screenshot that you see here is actually the CGM app from my phone. Each tiny black dot is a reading taken every 5 to 10 minutes. The normal range that non-diabetic people are shooting for is that light green bar that's running across the phone screen, a range of 70 to 140 milligrams per deciliter. So how would you get started? So in this baseline phase, you would wear the device for at least 14 days without making any changes to your daily routine. Cool. You don't have to do anything. You just wear it. Super helpful because then you want to establish your personal metabolic baseline. So every day you take note of key times when things happened. And luckily the CGM records your glucose, but you'll have to note when you actually do something. So for instance, when you eat something, food intake is probably the most important thing that you want to track, since the CGM is measuring glucose, which comes from what you eat. In addition, you want to record whenever you're active, and you want to note what kind of exercise you did, because this will tell you how your body uses fuel. With regards to sleep, pairing your CGM results with when and how well you slept might explain why you woke up in the middle of the night or why you felt restless. You'll also want to note what your stress or energy levels were for the day. And then you want to start to identify which foods cause high glucose spikes, for instance, potatoes or white rice. And then note when the blood glucose is naturally lower. And it's often in the first half of a cycle if you're still menstruating. Identify symptom triggers. Note your hot flashes if you experience weight gain or brain fog, and then look at your CGM and see if they correlate with spikes or sudden drops in glucose. Again, when blood glucose is unsteady, menopause symptoms tend to be more prevalent. And with this log alone, you can start to see how your body reacts to inputs or how it reacts when you take something away. You can learn a lot about your body in just 2 weeks. Probably the most significant marker you want to keep track of is glycemic variability. What you're looking at is CGM data from my phone app again, and here we're looking at the peaks and lows of a particular range of time, and in this example, we're looking at 24 hours. Glycemic variability is the point of your highest high and your lowest low, and how far each is from your average blood glucose during the range of time that you're analyzing. So you can look at your glycemic variability over a week or for the time that you've worn that particular sensor. So the main point here is that you want to keep those highs and lows as close to your average glucose over time, not just within the normal range. And this is important because glucose levels are already unstable due to the reduction in hormones. So we need to help our body manage the glucose chaos by taking charge of the lifestyle choices that we're able to control. And I'll go over some of those choices in the last slide. The next couple of examples come from the CGM desktop app, which is super helpful. This particular CGM brand allows you to look at more in-depth data, and they have several reports that are available. So in this first example, the graph shows 1 week's worth of daily data overlapping during the daytime hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And this person stayed within 70 to 140 milligrams per deciliter, and you don't see a lot of peaks and valleys. They maintained a pretty stable level through the day, and just a couple of spikes on Sunday. The purple line must have been Sunday brunch somewhere. So super helpful to have that steady level. In this second example, though, you can see how varied these results are. So again, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then, wow, the variability there is just so chaotic. So it's so important to keep your blood glucose levels as stable as possible. So here are the things that you can do to stabilize blood glucose and reduce those menopause symptoms. Eat protein first. Malia and Kim emphasized protein. It's so important. Eat it first. It's slow to digest, as well as fiber. Identify the trigger foods that are going to raise blood glucose levels. So swap white rice, maybe for cauliflower rice, or regular pasta for lentil pasta. Those are the higher fiber foods. And then take a quick walk after a meal. Figure out what your triggers are in the evening so you can sleep better. Make sure you sleep really well. Go back to the slides from Joe and figure out a protein-forward breakfast. Manage those stress levels, build that muscle, and then doing all of that will help to reduce frequent spikes. Thank you.
Okay, we are honored to welcome Joe Shulman. Joe is a certified nutrition therapist, menopause health coach, two-time best-selling author, nationally recognized yoga teacher, and founder of the Conscious Cleanse program. Within the Conscious Cleanse, Joe has developed a transformational perimenopause and menopause-specific health and nutrition program to help women who struggle with serious menopause symptoms. Her work is driven by a simple truth: women in midlife don't have to settle. With the right tools and support, Joe helps women reclaim vitality and feel stronger, sharper, and more energized than they have in years. Let's give a warm welcome to Joe Shulman.
All right, let me get this. So I'm definitely going to go over, I'm going to get the hook. So be ready not to get all the content. I have always been interested in menopause, and maybe some of you can relate to this, but I have a very core memory of my mom going through menopause. We lovingly called that her sweatpants years, where she would wear sweatpants to every place we would go, and my dad would be wearing a suit. This is real story, and my mom would wear a full sweatsuit, and this was in the 80s. We'd always be really embarrassed, and I was like, what are you going through, Mom? And we didn't understand it, and she didn't understand it, but she didn't care. She was like, I'm over it. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, and as I started to realize that was my mom going through menopause, I realized also how much of a struggle it was for her, and how she had so many symptoms. Also, how she got to this place of, I don't care anymore, which was very empowering, and maybe a lot of people in this room can relate to that. But My mom went through menopause at 40, and 40 is a young age to go through menopause. I went through menopause early as well, and what I did know is I remember thinking, I hope to do it differently, but I hope to have the tools, because our mothers didn't have the tools and the information that we do now. And so we're really at a very lucky time where we can experience menopause differently. And what I hope to do tonight is give you information that's very simple, that's actionable, and there are tools and habits that you can take with you that feel like they're not overwhelming. So we've covered a lot of really good information and very technical information, and I'm gonna try to pull back and give you a bird's eye view of some of the ways that you can add these habits into your daily routine. So this is your menopause food plate, and I have to look too. Okay, so if you think about this food plate, the first thing you might notice is it has 50% vegetables. And that's a different way of thinking about our food than we typically do. And when you think about adding 50% of your plate to be veggies, you are naturally going to increase your fiber. You're naturally going to get more minerals and vitamins and micronutrients, all the things that you need. So while I love tracking and I think it's really important, if you can also have a tool to think about what can I do, what's an easy way to think about my meal, every meal to think about adding more vegetables. Does anybody here think they're getting that many vegetables in any given, like, several meals? Most people aren't. Like, it's something that, if you think you are, raise your hand, because you have to be really intentional about it, right? And it's something that's great. And it's a different way of thinking about your plate. And in that, again, you're gonna be getting all of these dark leafy greens, kale, spinach, your cruciferous veggies, which are fantastic for hormones. I like to think about getting 30 to 40, and I think it was Kim who talked about this too, getting a variety of vegetables. So 30 to 40 per week in your vegetables, and one concrete way to do that is by having a smoothie every single day, and I'm gonna show you one of my menopause smoothies in a little bit. But 30 to 40 different vegetables. If I were gonna build my own, I call it Joe's Super Green Smoothie, I would put in celery, kale, spinach, chard, parsley, cilantro, I'm gonna keep going, cucumber, did I say celery? So at least right there, I've got 8 things, maybe spirulina, and I would add anything that's dark leafy, watercress, so 10 vegetables sometimes in a smoothie, just random green veggies with some maybe seeds and nuts, but that is 10 veggies in that one given smoothie. So you can get vegetables in ways that you may not think about it, and that's a really nice nutritional support. I notice when I start my day with these dark leafy greens that my brain turns on, so that brain fog, that word recall just naturally goes away. So this seems like a no-brainer, but it's not something we're actually applying. So some of these things you may say, I know that, but are you doing that? And that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, to think about, like, what could you actually do? What could you take on? Okay, so the next is protein, and we've talked a lot about protein, so I'm not gonna focus on protein so much tonight, except for to say the quality of the source of the protein you're getting is really important. Getting wild-caught fish, organic turkey and chicken, organic tofu, organic everything is so, so important. And I'll talk a little bit more about our toxic load and our environmental load. When it comes to your fish are really highly digestible, but we're worried a lot of times about getting mercury and heavy metals in our fish. So there's this really great company I like, it's called Seatopia, and they test all of their fish for heavy metals and microplastics. This gives you more leverage and leeway to eat fish multiple times a week. So if you can find tools like that to eat fish more, if it works for you, that's a nice kind of little hack. Complex carbohydrates is the next part of our plate. And to know how much of our plate should actually be these complex carbohydrates, I like referring to Rachel and a continuous glucose monitor. I'll have people wear a glucose monitor to see how much they can tolerate, like how much of it, whether it's what time of day they can tolerate it, whether it's eating protein first, or it's the type of carbohydrate they can tolerate. For me, I was talking to Rachel, I said, if I eat a sweet potato, it spikes over 200, and I get brain fog and I feel terrible, but sweet potatoes can be a superfood for some people. So this is where you're really thinking about customizing your plate based on what works for you and using these tools that we have to learn more about your body, because everybody's so different. I love complex carbohydrates in menopause because they boost serotonin and GABA. And I know some people in this room personally take GABA, right? They use that during their perimenopausal and menopausal transition. But just by eating these complex carbohydrates, eating these potatoes, these tubers, these squashes, you're boosting that. So that, I think, is fantastic. Food is truly incredible, and medicine, when we get the nutrients from it. The next is healthy fats and boosters. So I was tonight looking for some walnuts on the table right before I spoke, because I was like, I gotta turn my brain on, right? So healthy fats are so important for hormones. And some of the healthy fats that I like to get are from salmon, flax seeds, chia, walnuts. Those are not only healthy fats, but they're also omega fats, which are so, so good for our brain. And they help reduce inflammation in our body. And that's really the name of the game when it comes to menopause, is our inflammation rises, so what can we do nutritionally to bring it down? And then finally, I think Malia talked a little bit about calcium, but my favorite food and my favorite superfood are sardines. Has anybody had, do people like sardines here? Oh yeah, okay, good. So sardines with bones, they're very bioavailable protein, high in calcium, high in omegas. I'll start my day with a sardine salad in addition to my all veggie smoothie, and it's like I'm ready to go. Fiber, protein, calcium. It's 20 grams of protein for the sardines. I need some sardines right now. And so that's nice. It could be even higher, but you're also getting some protein from other parts of, I usually get it from other parts of my smoothie. So anyway, sardines are great, and it's a great bioavailable calcium to add. My kids eat sardine bones all the time. They'll just want to eat the bones of the sardines for calcium, not even the whole thing. So kids like them too. Okay. So we've talked a lot about that. I'm going to move on for time's sake. This is a 2-day menopause meal plan to show you how you could potentially construct a day in the life of. Now, these are not, I would say these are more realistic in terms of protein and fiber. You could go even higher in the protein, but looking at how you could have for breakfast a smoothie, and for lunch a really big salad, and the different nutrients, the seeds, the olives, the antioxidants, the dressing here, that just very simply, it doesn't have to be overwhelming to execute this. And the first day, it has 35 to 38 grams of fiber, 100 grams of protein. So for most people, that is something, getting to 100 grams, a lot of people will say, if you can at least get to 100 grams of protein, you've hit a milestone. So that's something to think about. And then the second day, you can see again, has similar flavor to the first. Do people get meal plan fatigue? Do you guys feel like you know what to eat? Who feels like they know what to make every single day? No. Does anybody feel like cooking is their barrier to entry to execute? Yes? Okay. So making things as simple as possible when you're in the kitchen is also really important. Making things like a really big salad every single day and adding nuts and seeds and just an olive oil and lemon dressing makes this not difficult. All of my lunch today was sardines. I had leftover horseradish from Passover, and I had olives, and I had flaxseed crackers, and I cut up a ton of veggies, and it was my healthy smorgasbord of a lunch. So you can make things really simple, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. This is my Power Up protein smoothie in my cookbook, and I'm showing this because I created this for the menopausal woman. And it has chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, walnuts, it has hemp seeds, and these are all, seeds are incredible for premenopausal and menopausal women, but you're getting with the pumpkin seeds magnesium, chia seeds fiber, omegas, the hemp seeds are really high in protein, the cinnamon helps to stabilize your blood sugar, you're getting blueberries are antioxidants, and then the spinach there is great for calcium, and it's adding in more veggies, and I would even add more to this smoothie. But this is an example of how you can get your nutrition in a day without making it feel like it's a heavy lift, or here's a concrete way to execute it. Okay, where am I with time? I have 3 minutes left? Okay. So very briefly, we're going to talk about hormone traps, alcohol. Kim already talked about that, so I'm gonna move on to the next. But if you can reduce or eliminate alcohol, it really makes a difference in your hormone symptoms. Artificial sweeteners, women have been duped by the diet industry because we have been made to believe that diet is healthy, and it's not. It actually increases our belly fat. So take stock of what you eat that has diet or artificial sweeteners, and I would get rid of all of it. Processed meats. Processed meats are linked to colorectal cancer, which is on the rise. So if you're going to eat any of these don't eat the processed meat, but if you're going to eat any of these meats, make sure there's no nitrates in them. If you are wanting to eat sausages, there are brands that are just pure ingredients, and that's it. There's no preservatives, there's nothing else. So go for that. Saturated in trans fat, just very briefly, trans fats are the most harmful of all of those. If you see something that's hydrogenated, skip it. Take it off your plate completely. Ooh, go back. Processed foods. Kim talked about this a little bit. Looking at your label, if you can't pronounce an ingredient, you want to stay away from it. The statistic is that 60 to 70% of our diet are processed foods. That's where I think tracking what you're eating is really powerful to see how much of your food is coming from whole, real food. Caffeine is directly linked to menopausal symptoms. So if you are somebody who drinks a lot of caffeine, consider reducing your caffeine. I would say even having it before 8 a.m. or not at all, or switching to a black tea or a green tea. Okay, I'm gonna go to environmental toxins because I think this is one we don't get to talk about enough. So the toxic load on women is much higher than men. Between our cosmetics, between our fragrances, between our makeup products, our shampoos. I love an app called by the Environmental Working Group. You can put in whatever product that you use and it'll give you a score. And it shows you the toxicity of this product, because most of us are getting way too many chemicals from the water we're drinking, the air we're breathing, and the food we're eating. So buying organic is so important. Removing plastic from your kitchen. Go into your kitchen and take an audit. I'm over, okay? And we can talk about this more another time, but go into your kitchen and really just see what you have. Don't feel overwhelmed or like you're doing a bad job, but think, what do I have and what could I up-level? Go in and say, could I remove plastic from my Tupperware containers and just swap up for glass? And small little habits really go far. And I won't today talk about this either, so thank you. All right.
Okay. Thank you to our incredible presenters tonight. Thank you for sharing such valuable insights. We are going to move to our Q&A, and just a few notes about the Q&A. First of all, do we have 3 more slides we need to show, Shari? No, okay. So important, please raise your hand if you have a question. We will come around, Heather and I will have microphones, and please talk into the microphone so everyone can hear you clearly. To ensure we can get as many people as possible to ask their questions, please keep your questions brief, focused, and free of personal details. And as a reminder, please frame your comments as questions rather than statements, and keep in mind that we are recording tonight. So let's move on to the Q&A if our presenters can come on up to the stage.
Are these on? Oh, these aren't.
My question was if there is like a dumbed-down formula when you're looking at the ingredients, anything that we're eating, how much added sugars versus proteins? Is there like some sort of formula, like one should be higher than the other? Obviously, protein should be higher than the added sugar, but when you're looking at the ingredients, like that's where I get tripped up. Like, where is there like a cheat sheet kind of to look at it to see if it's food that we should be eating or should be buying or not?
That makes sense.
Kim, do you want to start with that since you did the nutrition labels? You don't have to.
Yeah, well, I think if you just look at added sugars by itself and you see, my rule of thumb is if it's got 5 or more, I put it back. Or, okay, maybe I'll just have half a serving if I really want it. If you just look at added sugars by itself, 5 grams or more, you shouldn't have more than 30 grams of added sugar per day. It's kind of what the doctors say. So I don't know if that answers your question as far as.
I mean, in general, just like, is there a cheat sheet for looking at like the back of, the ingredients for anything that we're eating or buying at the grocery store?
If
like,
you're not seeing a nutrition panel, just ingredients.
Or no, nutrition in the nutrition panel. Let's put it that way. Like,
Yeah. So the list of ingredients will be given in order of prevalence of what that ingredient is. So if you see like chia seeds first, then you know that that's the highest amount of ingredient in that list, and then they get lower down the list. And if you see like sugar is the second to last, then it's going to be smaller, but then you go up to where it says carbohydrates total, and under that we'll say fiber and total sugars, and then total added sugars is the 3rd or 4th line down usually. And that added sugar line will give you the exact amount of added sugars that's in that product per serving size. That last slide that I went over, so you'll see exactly how much added sugar is per serving size in that product. So that would be your formula, as you just kind of know, like, okay, this had 5 grams of sugar in, 3 cookies. Okay, so I know I won't eat those 3. I'll eat 2 cookies and I'll have less than 5 grams. I guess maybe I'm not understanding your question.
just move on.
Thank you. There's an app, and I can't remember the name right now, but you can scan it, and it'll do kind of what you're saying. It'll be like green
Yuka?
light. What is it called?
Is it Yuka?
Say that again.
Yuka? Isn't
Yuka?
it? Like Y-U-K-A?
Y-U-K-A.
Right.
There's so many.
Yeah, that's the one I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
and that can kind of say like yes, thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of like being your personal nutritionist?
Thank you so
Is that
much.
what
We
you're
have a
asking?
question back here now.
Thanks. Hi, I'm wondering if there is any recommendation for lowering APOB, or if that's more of a genetic. It sounded like, as you were presenting, Dr. Swanson, it sounded like it's not specifically genetic, but is there any way that we can lower our APOB numbers or values if they're high?
That's a great question.
Can you say what an APOB is?
Yeah, I'm going to go into that a little bit. So, 2 really important cholesterol markers to get checked. Each one costs like $5. So if anyone says that costs too much, like my prior boss before I was self-employed said, just pay the $5. So apolipoprotein B, very important cardiac risk marker. Usually, in most people, apolipoprotein B parallels the LDL cholesterol. While there is a genetic component, lifestyle is huge. You can 100% modify this by eating less saturated fat. When I list saturated fat for my patients, I usually say high-fat dairy, egg yolks, steak, pork, and what am I missing? Sorry. Butter is a big one. So if your ApoB is over 90, limiting saturated fat is huge. Does every menopausal woman need to limit saturated fat? No. It is dependent on what your own genetics and what your own labs show. Lipoprotein little a is the other marker you should definitely get checked. That is highly genetic. You can modify that partially through lifestyle, but it's an independent risk factor for heart disease, and that is not affected by lifestyle.
Thank you.
Hi. Can you speak a little bit about in post-menopause, are the nutrition changes that and nutrition ideas that you've presented tonight, can you see reversals once you're in post-menopause on some of these, like you were just saying on some of these markers, like, oh, if your levels are elevated, you actually can turn them around, versus medicines, which weren't really, they were kind of out of scope for tonight? And can you also speak a little bit about osteoporosis, and would you change some of your recommendations or bring other certain things forward if you're trying to address that?
I guess it depends on what it is you're trying to change. So if it's a metabolic marker like A1C, you can definitely change that. And using CGM technology is super helpful around lowering blood glucose levels and really getting a handle on insulin. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I was just trying to get a clear sense of how much of the recommendations and impact were for during perimenopause versus postmenopause, and it sounds like it carries through and it doesn't, there's not such a hard cutoff.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting question, because if you look at the slope of change in perimenopause, it's severe. So we see the slope of change in bone density, weight gain, and muscle loss. So we lose bone, we lose muscle, and we gain fat at a certain rate throughout our life, and then menopause hits, and the slope of change in perimenopause is dramatic, and then the slope goes back to a less steep slope in postmenopause, but it continues to go down. So there is a steeper slope in perimenopause, but it does, none of these metabolic factors improve in postmenopause unless hormones are added in, because the ovaries don't kick back in and provide supportive hormones in postmenopause, which I know seems like a simple, stupid statement, but I think it's important to recognize that.
I found with women in perimenopause, sometimes nutritionally, they struggle even more than they do postmenopausal because there's such erratic spikes that even when their hormones drop dramatically, they're a little more stable, but they're low. So some people do, I think it's really person dependent. Have you found that?
So symptoms, yes.
Or even weight loss.
Oh yeah, weight loss slows.
Weight loss,
Yeah.
weight loss gets easier post-menopause.
Yeah.
But in perimenopause, weight loss is much more difficult because your hormone spikes and your estrogen are so erratic.
Thank you. And we have a question over here.
First of all, thank you so much for putting this on tonight and being here. There's so much that I need to do to change and be healthier, so thank you so much. Could you speak to two different things? One is, I don't think I'm getting enough calcium. After hearing what you were saying tonight, I don't eat a lot of dairy, and I know some calciums are better than others as a supplement, so could you speak to that? And then also, could some of you address creatine and if that's important going forward? Thank you.
So forms of calcium, and we know sardines are good, but what else is good out there?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to support your calcium. Yes, definitely sardines, adding in all the veggies that we were just the dark leafy greens, the cruciferous and the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, gosh, I'm kind of at a loss right now. Making sure you get that variety. You should have sunshine helps support that with the vitamin D that brings in a support system for that calcium. Really, and any kind of vegetable is going to help you with that somewhat. Making sure your levels up of D as well.
And then there was a question about creatine. Could someone talk about creatine?
Go ahead, go for it.
So calcium supplementation too, you mentioned. So I generally don't recommend that across the board, but when I get a DEXA back, if it is highly in the negative numbers and showing some loss of bone density, then I look at how much calcium is my patient able to aim for in their diet. So I calculate that from their food log, and then I calculate the deficit. And this is what the Menopause Society actually recommends, because when you take calcium as a supplement, some of it does end up going into the arteries and depositing as plaque. So we don't love calcium as a supplement. We love it through food. So when you have osteopenia or osteoporosis, you do need to hit those calcium goals. And so it may involve taking a small amount of calcium. I'm typically talking about calcium citrate, which doesn't need to be taken with food. Creatine is, I'm gonna just go to my slide about this.
The slides aren't up though.
At the end, yeah. Okay, so the top row is
the slide shows it there.
Thanks. Okay, that was a special moment. Anyways, so calcium.
You all get the slides.
Yeah. So creatine is one of my top supplements that actually matters. I really don't love wasting money or time on supplements that aren't going to move the needle. Creatine increases lean body mass, cognition is so key. I would not just go to the store tonight and start a scoop of creatine tomorrow. You have to ease into it. It causes fluid shifts initially that can cause dizziness, lightheadedness, changes to bowel function. I personally don't like my patients starting it without provider guidance. I'm sure it'd be fine if you were working to educate yourself to start it on your own, but it's a very powerful supplement for lean body mass.
You will get those slides
Thank you.
in the future.
Do you have a preference between fermented foods or probiotics? Would you recommend one over the other?
Fermented foods have been shown to be much more effective than probiotics. There are a handful of strains in probiotics versus when you get a fermented veggie, it's more bioavailable for the gut, and it tends to help feed the good bacteria better in the microbiome.
Is that even the case when you have leaky gut? Or does the fermented food kind of cause some distress in the stomach?
Do fermented foods cause distress?
Or, yeah, like extra gas or that. So should you heal your gut first before you do the fermented foods?
Eating fermented foods, you really have to put them in your body and see how you feel. I think it's very dependent. Also, the type of fermented food. Like if you're putting in sauerkraut and cabbage is something that's going to be distressful for your gut, then you might try something that's a little bit more easy on your gut, a fermented veggie that's not a cruciferous or a cabbage type of veggie. But my experience is that for the most part, fermented veggies are pretty easily tolerated. If you have gas and bloating, try another one, try a little bit less, and just notice how that works for you.
And then is kombucha considered, would you consider that a fermented food to be added, or is there sugars?
I don't like it as much because of the sugars. There are some kombucha with less. That wouldn't be my number one go-to when it comes to a fermented product.
Okay, thank you.
So, can I just add to that sometimes I think maybe what you might want to get tested for SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which that could be something that fermented foods might not be happy about. So just look into that SIBO aspect.
Thank you so much. We have another question.
So this is another question about calcium. It's kind of a two-part question. I know calcium is best obtained through food. A lot of the non-dairy milks are now fortified with calcium. For example, there's an almond milk, you can get 470 milligrams per 8-ounce cup. Would you consider that a supplement or through food because it's fortified? And then I have another question after that.
So there's like levels of nutrition, and they go with your values and your resource in life. Like today I had a protein shake on my desk, and the patient I was working with was just like, protein powder's horrible, it's a processed food, I can't believe people are using that. And I'm like, I know, but I have like patients back to back and I need to get my protein in today. And no, protein powder's not ideal, but same thing with that fortified with calcium. Definitely I'd put it in the supplement category, but I would also put it in the category, in the processed food category, because soy milk is a processed food. However, it's better than not getting that calcium in.
Great. That answers that. And then for supplementing calcium, I have heard, and some MDs are not, say the studies don't support this, but that vitamin K can help direct the calcium to the bones. I don't know the mechanism, but rather than the arteries, and kind of the ideal combination is calcium, magnesium, D, and K. What do you think about that?
I don't recommend taking anything on the periodic table together. So I don't recommend combining the moment in time that you take calcium and magnesium together, because iron, calcium, magnesium can inhibit absorption of one another. They have effects with where they can limit absorption. So I would definitely not buy a supplement that mixes cal and mag. 100% of the time I'm sending vitamin D with K2 because of the reason you just mentioned. I definitely recommend vitamin K2 for getting calcium to the bones. Yes, and you can do calcium, D, and K2 all at the same time.
Thank you.
Hello. I have a question. How essential is HRT in mitigating the effects of all the things?
What was the last word you said? Mitigating the effects of what?
All the things.
All the things.
Yes.
Well, you're asking a menopause specialist. The tide has swung. So I highly believe that menopause hormone therapy is extremely beneficial for perimenopausal symptoms and for long-term disease prevention. Reduces colon cancer risk, reduces heart disease and stroke risk, dementia, mortality, improves sleep, improves mood, so improves muscle mass. I do this all day long. I love menopause hormone therapy. I think it's extremely supportive. I work with women who have contraindications to see how we can navigate those.
We have a question over here.
Thank you all so much. This has been so informative and sparks a lot of other questions, but I have two. I'll keep it brief. And maybe for Kim and Joe, two things in dovetailing all the talk of calcium. There's not a lot of mention of milk and Greek yogurt, and then a lot of almond milk and hemp milk. Do either of you recommend for everybody, or is it a very individual thing to stay away from milk? So that's one question. The second is about green smoothies.
You do that and I'll do green smoothies. I feel like it is very individual. I mean, if you may, for a long time I ate dairy and I didn't know that I had a casein intolerance. So I finally took that out and I was like, oh, my gut feels better. So you might be eating something and not know that you have an issue with it. So it is highly individual. I don't necessarily think dairy is a bad thing. What you eat it with and what's put in it could make it a bad thing. But if you're looking at clean, grass-fed, Greek high protein yogurt might be good for you. But for me, it would be horrible. Yeah, so, yeah, and then you were going to take the other.
And you were going to ask about greens.
What's your feeling on powdered greens? And is there anything that's good?
Well, like Malia was saying with protein powder, the preference is not protein powder or powdered greens. A lot of the powdered greens are being third-party tested, and they're testing very high for heavy metals and additives. And so then that's very counterproductive to what we're looking for. There are, of course, exceptions to the rules, and there are companies out there who I think do a good job. The athletic greens is one I would not recommend, and they actually have tested very high in heavy metals. Consumer Reports did a study on them, and they were like, do not take this product. They have done a great job marketing it. But in terms of being a clean product, not so much. There's a company called Paleo Valley, and I like their greens powder, but ideally I would just add spirulina or do something, get a more simple, something in its simple form. I've tried everything, I product test everything, and as my own N of one, I've never found a green powder that I like.
Thanks for all your help and insights tonight. I have a question, I think, for Rachel and Dr. Malia, Dr. Swanson. Sorry. I appreciated how you were talking about the cycles of your hormones, and I appreciate the glucose monitoring with understanding your spikes and your habits and thinking about the glucose monitor over a long period of time. How do you pair that with measuring your hormones and your metabolic panels? That's a moment in time as like a baseline or actually your pattern, especially if you're still getting cycles. How do you make sense of like where you actually are versus where you are like when you happen to test?
So I see a lot of perimenopausal women, and we use CGMs on most patients. And I usually am using a continuous glucose monitor in my patients for a 3-month time span. So yeah, you're right. A woman who's at early perimenopause, her CGM is going to look different than late perimenopause, than postmenopause. But you're capturing a season in your life and how you need to best support yourself in that season of life. And what's really cool that Rachel mentioned is someone can have a hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of your blood sugar for 3 months that's really high, and they can bring it down without medication, strictly from the feedback from the CGM. There are not very many lifestyle tools we have like that are as powerful as a CGM. So I think even though your hormones are fluctuating, the season of insulin resistance is still a general season. So early perimenopause, you might have 3 years where you're generally in a season, and you can capture that with 3 months of data with a CGM.
Maybe Rachel could talk about pairing foods, like in your class that you pair the foods to stop the spike?
Right. So that was eating certain foods first, so the macronutrient of protein, eating that first, and the higher fiber foods first when you're looking at your plate, so that the digestion of those macronutrients are happening first, and then the higher sugar type foods or starchy foods last. So that really slows down the glucose rise.
Thank you. And here we have
It's
a
a good
question
sheet.
here. Thank you.
I'm wondering if a pescatarian is going to have trouble getting enough variety of the protein or quantity of the protein, or create imbalances if they just eat certain kinds of protein.
What did she just say?
Pescatarians are really, there's a lot of protein in fish.
Yeah.
Don't take that for granted. It's, actually, you don't have to eat as much of fish to get the protein that you need. If you look at Joe's chart, or Kim's chart, you'll see that the amount of protein in fish is quite high. So I wouldn't worry about it if you're pescatarian.
Yeah, you can just vary up all the different fish that you and shellfish. It's pretty vast, actually.
I also have vegan patients who meet these 1.3 grams per pound of body weight, 150, 160 grams of protein a day, and they're bodybuilders and they're incredible. So it's 100% doable. Soy, you have to be okay with bringing soy into your life. Tofu, tempeh, and edamame are powerful protein foods.
Okay, and so there's not like an imbalance that can get created by being heavier on the fish side of things than other kinds of proteins, I guess is the
I
question.
think people tolerate fish better than most other types of proteins. If you're eating fish, the only thing that can be problematic is just making sure that there's no mercury in your fish, that you're not getting a heavy metal overload from the fish. And that's why there's a recommendation about having 2 servings of fish per week. But if you can get, I mentioned a company called Seatopia, and I really like them because of that reason. They're testing every single piece of fish that goes through their factory, and they're making sure that there is like a certain level of mercury and microplastics. So when you do that, you can feel good about eating fish more often.
This is going to be our last question.
I had 2 quick questions. Is there a glucose monitor that you recommend? A lot of them require memberships in order to be able to get your data and things like that. But if you only want to do it for a 3-month period or slightly longer, are there some that you recommend?
Yeah, the one that I use is the Stello by Dexcom. If you're just starting out, they're really excellent. The app itself on the phone is really easy to navigate. Another brand is the Lingo by Abbott. I'm not so much a fan of that. It's a lot harder to navigate that, and you cannot share your data with your practitioner. The great thing about the Stello is that you can share your data with the practitioner, and they can help you kind of analyze the results of your CGM and get an idea of what's going on for you. So I would do the Stello, and you could do a subscription that's less than 3 months. And they have an option to cancel at any time. So, yeah.
Can I add to that? I do think it's worth mentioning that the 2 prescription ones, Dexcom and Libre, are the cheapest. So Libre is $35 a month at Costco, or sorry, $35. I forget if it's a month or per sensor. Each sensor is 2 weeks. But the cheapest is actually the prescription one. And I don't know how you feel, Rachel. Once you get the data, if you have never been exposed to the concept of blood sugar before, it's really helpful to have a practitioner to go through it with you. So like, just because you can get it without a prescription doesn't mean you can interpret it all by yourself.
And I like NutriSense. I use that one a lot with people that I work with, and I think that's pretty user-friendly as well. I just had one other quick question. How far apart do you need to take your calcium and magnesium? Because I've read that calcium is best absorbed at night, but that's also when I take my magnesium to help sleep, so.
I say take calcium in the morning and magnesium at night. You'll absorb plenty in the morning. Mag is helpful for relaxation and sleep.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys were amazing. I also want to thank the Menopause Committee and Heather Glubo for spearheading this program tonight, and Sam and Aurel. And Aurel has arranged these gorgeous flowers for our presenters, and she's going to bring them up to them now. So I want to thank our panelists, Dr. Swanson, Joe Shalman, Rachel Cruz, and Kim McCormick. We have gained so many insights tonight. I am so excited to start putting these changes into my own life beginning tomorrow, switching my calcium from nighttime to morning. Who knew? So we do hope to see, thank you so much. And let's give another round of applause for our presenters. This program would not have been possible without your commitment to women's health, all four of you. You're amazing. Thank you so much. By the way, I'm Elise Bloom, and I'm on the Menopause Committee and on the Women of the J Advisory Board. We hope to see you at J-Fest this weekend or at another upcoming program. We have a ton of wonderful programs, so check out the website. And our formal program has now ended, and thank you all so much for attending tonight. We're thrilled that we had this amazing program. Thank you.